The feds are relentlessly fixated on pride flags, and I have exclusive government communications exposing the absolutely absurd extent of this obsession, leading to questions about the staggering cost of this performative virtue signaling to taxpayers. So let's dig in. Now, this exclusive communication comes 2 years too late. It dates back to 2023 and involves the Accessibility and Inclusivity in the Built Environment branch of Public Services and Procurement Canada. Yes, such a bureaucracy exists in the Canadian government, so vital that it heroically ensures federal buildings don't discriminate. Look, I'm all for accessibility. Ensuring everyone can navigate and use public spaces is a no-brainer. But this inclusivity nonsense feels like bureaucratic overreach, piling on layers of vague ideals that sound noble but are just frivolous virtue signaling without practical outcomes. And let's pause here for a moment, because the same year of this exclusive communication in 2023, the Accessibility and Inclusivity in the Built Environment branch of Procurement Canada put out a report declaring that the Government of Canada's quest is to be the most accessible and inclusive public service in the world. They concluded that their Accessible Government Built Environment Initiative, called AGBEI, is crucial for assessing federal properties, especially leased ones, up for renewal to meet the needs of equity-seeking groups. As Canada's largest employer, the government vows to build a diverse, inclusive, healthy, and accessible public service because obviously those buzzwords fix everything. Now back to these documents, because it looks like a bunch of chatter related to the utmost important goals of putting up pride flags in government buildings is what started it all. Staffers were coordinating how to get pride progress flags shipped out to Prince Edward Island and Newfoundland. And the flags cost roughly $100 each, but the cost of shipping was over that, running approximately $112 a pop, making the total cost $212 and change for virtue signaling flags. In one instance, staffer Renee Ball ordered 5 flags to her home address in Waterloo, Ontario, including 5 interior oak poles, gold bases, finials, and spreaders for $2,393, including shipping. The staffers thought it was best to ship to home addresses because, as many of you know, they now work from home and not everyone is in the office on the same day. I'm not kidding. Here's a quote. "We are thinking of getting them shipped to home addresses instead," the email from Renee reads. "We are in the office on different days and want to make sure the courier is received by everyone." Yeah. Of course they do. They even had to go back to finance and get the amounts increased. Renee writes, "I am still waiting to receive the shipping costs for all the shipments. Please send them to me ASAP, as we have to work with our finance team to increase the commitment." This is absolutely ridiculous. Now, someone named River chimes in saying, "Good evening, PSPN," and that stands for the Public Service Pride Network. So again, let's pause, because yes, the Government of Canada has an entire network dedicated to, quote, "celebrating pride in the Canadian federal public service." Now, River goes on to say, "I am the PHAC co-chair for the Gender and Sexual Diversity Network, called GSDN, at the Public Health Agency of Canada." Yeah, so the Public Health Agency of Canada and Health Canada, you know, those ones telling you to trust the science, well, they have an entire network dedicated to employees representing the full spectrum of gender identities, gender expressions, and sexual orientations. And do you know what all of this kerfuffle of getting these super crucial flags was for? Well, River explains the nail-biting timeline. "We still have not received the flag order we submitted on June 1st, as per attached," his email reads. "Are you able to give us a timeline for when we should expect to receive the order? Hoping to get it before PSPW." Now there's another acronym which stands for Public Service Pride Week. I can't say when it ran in 2023, but this year's is scheduled for August 18th to 22nd, 2025. Their theme? Together, we create change. As you can see, it's grown exponentially since the first year of this crucial public service, taxpayer-funded endeavor in 2019, up from 400 participants that year to 12,000 plus projected for this year. I guess that makes sense since the federal bureaucracy has outpaced private sector growth threefold in recent years. You can have a look at their proposed 2025 itinerary for yourself, like lived experiences in the field of changing lives and protecting Canadians, presented by Correctional Services Canada, and Love in a Dangerous Time, Canada's LGBT Purge, presented by Veterans Affairs Canada. Yeah, I'm sure all veterans really appreciate that when they're living on the streets and unable to get compensation. That's your tax dollars hard at work. Mark Paquette, a property and facilities manager, confirms that buildings hoisting the Pride Progress flag would, of course, adhere to official flag protocols and etiquette. Naturally, he tosses in a link to the Public Service Pride website, which is dedicated to holding the sacred scrolls of wisdom on how to properly fly the Progress flag without causing an international incident. More staffers from the Accessibility and Inclusivity in the Built Environment chime in as positive space ambassadors about carrying poles or flagpole belts for the marchers because, of course, the Public Service Pride Week wouldn't be a full event without its very own parade. Someone else from the Pride at Work network also chimes in, and again, yes, there is yet another branch of public service and procurement dedicated to being a true force of advocacy and support for members of the two-spirit, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, questioning, intersex, and additional sexually and gender diverse 2S LGBTQIA+ community and their allies. Look at their mission. Pride at Work acts as an agent of change, working closely with branches to ensure that policies, programs, and projects are thought of with inclusion in mind, providing advice on the creation of inclusive washrooms, or supporting the updating of information technology systems to allow the modification of names and genders in databases. The network has a concrete role in transforming work environments. Thank goodness that our tax dollars are tirelessly championing these inclusive washrooms and putting tampons in men's bathrooms and name-swapping databases, because nothing screams agent of change like micromanaging who sits or stands to pee and or proper z, zer, he, him, they, them titles on online forums. But wait, I know you can't believe it, and really neither can I, but this all gets worse. One staffer is like, wait, most Government of Canada buildings should have a pride flag. Orders have been placed for 3 years in a row. And another is like, yeah, each regional office has pride flags for use outside on flagpoles and or inside the lobbies. And in terms of potential need for additional flags for use at parades, a number of the major centers' parades have already taken place. So it turns out that all of this communication started at the end of July, which is after, as pointed out, most major cities like Toronto already hosted their Pride Parade festivities. So the real reason that they were scrambling was to have updated flags by the time that the Public Service Pride Week rolled around. Look at this email from Michael Giacino, Director at Public Services and Procurement Canada. My principal concern with any flags we might have in stock is that they have not been used since 2019 and therefore likely predate the updated flag. He has to look into whether or not multiple departments participating in an event together give up their individual departmental identifier in favor of the Canada wordmark. And he isn't even sure if this proposed repeated corporate event could be considered a cost from his directorate. That's because the Pride at Work Network's interim chair, Dominic, complained that they do not currently have a budget for these types of expenses, i.e. these flags they so desperately need for their event. And then he asks, do we possibly have a banner somewhere with Public Services and Procurement Canada logo on it that could be used for the parade? They were trying to reuse other Pride flags from past events, but one flag in a photo was this new intersex Pride flag and not the progressive, inclusive Pride flag used by the Government of Canada. And Dominic, that same guy who doesn't have a budget for these flags, wanted the inclusive/progress flag as it represents most of the 2S LGBTQIA+ community, of course, while Canadians grapple with inflation, unemployment, and collapsing social services like healthcare and housing. The procurement service squanders thousands on frantically chasing the latest progress inclusive flags for their Pride Week with no dedicated budget, which epitomizes outrageous bureaucratic waste. This shameless detachment from the nation's real priorities and reality, like affordability and access to care, leave citizens in the dust, and untold numbers of bureaucrats like Renee, River, Mark, and Michael burn through taxpayer dollars on this trivial pursuit, with their salaries with a 2023 average total of $125,300 per federal bureaucrat, including pay, pensions, and benefits, as per the Parliamentary Budget Officer, only compound the cost of this absurd flag fiasco. For Rebel News, I'm Tamara Ugolini. If you appreciate our government accountability work, you can consider supporting it and check out more reports just like this one at rebelinvestigates.com. That's rebelinvestigates.com.